Looky ye, handsome lad. Come to this rock, play in the tough.
So a general note to begin with, this is all about lead rope soloing on long multi-pitch routes. I'm not so much interested in single pitch sport climbing on my own, but rather on moving efficiently and fluidly on long walls, long routes. So that being said, I see three main hazards. First of all, of course, being on the mountain on your own, all by yourself. Second is relying on diverted gear, I would call it, or on practices not intended by the manufacturer. And third, I would call it a niche problem. So there's very little common experience and knowledge. So either you'll have to rely on practices that you find out yourself or test knowledge on your own. In other words, I have to think and test everything myself, or else rely on other people's uncertified advice. And this is simply not enough for me. I feel a strong need for additional safety measures, and this is where the backup topic comes into play. The crux I see with the backup topic is that it's always about balancing. Well, it's a balancing problem, so it's always about finding your personally right balance between safety on the one hand and flow on the other. So for me, it's not possible to optimize or to maximize both safety and speed and flow at the same time. It's always a matter of balancing it in between these two extremes or two aspects. And so I see backups as a serial system located behind or after the main safety system. On the other hand, my motivational starting point for the whole lead rope soloing topic is to experience a feeling of flow and moving fluidly through long routes on my own. It's about not having to wait on the belay and wait for partners and messing around, but it's about moving all the time. So compromising flow in the sake of safety for me really isn't an option. So this is why I started trying to think about more fluid, flowy ways of lead rope soloing, while I didn't want to make any compromise on the safety side either, as a parent, as a father of two kids, and also as someone who loves life. So this is why I spent so much time thinking about how to maximize both aspects, both safety and speed, flow. So to me it felt quite natural and logic to introduce the concept of redundancy to lead rope soloing, redundancy versus backup. We all know the concept of redundancy from other areas where safety matters. For example, you always see workers at height with two ropes, cavers use two headlamps at least. And probably if you've ever taken an airplane, have you ever seen a pilot, just one pilot in the airplane equipped with an ejector seat? Probably not. So there's always two pilots sitting next to each other, both completely autonomous. So in case one doesn't work anymore, the other can take over 100% completely autonomous. So this is what I understand with the redundancy system. You have two systems in parallel. And since I see the REVO as the best lead rope soloing device out there for my purposes, why not take two of them and use them in parallel? First of all, the REVO, in my eyes, is the perfect rope feeder when leading a pitch. So the wheel acts like a reel between live rope and dead rope. Secondly, I think there is no other 3-in-1 device out there. So one device for leading, repelling and seconding a pitch, all without any need of intermediate manipulations. And thirdly, the REVO is simply the device that I most trust in, not because I've got any shares with Wild Country or anything, but maybe it's simply because I know it the most intimately. But I think the REVO differs quite strongly from other devices because its locking function or the locking trigger is speed, is the actual total speed that you reach or that the rope can pass through your device, and it doesn't depend on any impact forces or anything else. Plus, you cannot override its locking mechanism manually or accidentally, which is very important when lead rope soloing as well. Yeah, so for me this is really the device I most trust in. So mainly I see three cons or three cruxes with this double rope, double REVO system. First of all, you have the double cost or the additional cost of a second REVO. Then you have some additional or more complex rope management. And I think especially in the beginning it takes some higher skills before you really get fluid with a second rope than with just one rope. And then thirdly, I think there is twice as high a risk of rope ends getting stuck, of course. But there's also measures against that. One main advantage I see in this double rope, double REVO system is that we can reduce the potential for human error, as we do not need to change the system between leading, repelling and seconding. Of course, that also adds a lot of speed into the system. Then you don't have any backup knots to slow you down. And I feel that a redundant system is more likely adds much more safety than most backup systems. First of all, because I don't see any backup system that can do you any good in case of a damaged live rope. And this potential for me isn't that unrealistic. I see a lot of potential for rope damage. In general, I think is quite underestimated, and especially in lead rope soloing, I see a completely different potential for causing problems to your live rope. Because when you repel, you don't just repel vertically like you do in normal climbing, but you always have to follow the line of the roots, and you have to clean your pieces, clean your protection. And so there's always some kind of pendulum if the route isn't straightforward. And so you have a pendulum potentially over some edges, and if that edge is somewhat rough or sharp, that can cause damage. Secondly, or thirdly, I see quite some potential for longer falls in case of a backup that you rely on. And longer falls, especially in moderate terrain, can cause, of course, some serious harm to you. So much more potential for longer falls than a second parallel system that should work just like the main system.